You can find us online very easily. Mirabusiness.fm is the website. You might be watching us there now. We're on YouTube as well, LinkedIn, all the usual areas. Just look for Mira, M-I-R-A, Business FM. To get in touch, info@mira.fm, and whatsapp.mira.fm means you don't need to remember a phone number. That's the way to get in touch if you want to. Kelly Lundberg is here. She's a personal branding expert. She's a TEDx speaker. I'm learning. Personal branding is a trust accelerator, is a phrase you just mentioned off air there, Kelly, and I wonder if you can expand upon that, because I love that phrase.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to building trust and why would someone buy from you, or why do you want to promote someone, is because you trust them, and that your personal brand and how you come across consistently delivers on that. When I say delivers, it builds I say security, but it builds confidence that you can deliver on what you're doing. It always shows up on time, or they always send an email afterwards, or there's always, there's that. Then there was the piece, I've played it a few times actually on TV, In Pursuit of Happiness. There's a movie with Will Smith, and he gets put in jail for 24 hours because he's not paid parking fines, and he basically runs to the interview with the company that he's been interning at. But he's dressed like, he's been painting. And, he said all the right questions and answered all the right things. But then he said, listen, you're dressed like a painter. And he was like, that's because I was painting. And the guy next to him basically says, has he ever turned up like this before? No. Every single time I've seen him, he looks sharp suit, looks the part, because the trust has been built visually. That's one of your personal brand pillars, is how you wear it. So there's trust in that meant there's one day he didn't do it. The credibility is still there, though.
Okay. You mentioned something there, brand pillars, one of your brand pillars. And I'm wondering about the actual visual image that you present as part of personal branding, because this is something I'm pretty bad at. I'm not a suit guy, never have been, probably never will be. I'm not much of a tie wearer. So if I'm wearing a suit, the usual comment is, are you in court? The standard phrase, that's what people will say.
Or you getting married.
Yeah, getting married or in court, one of those two, going to a funeral if it's a black tie. So how important is that? I mean, that's one of the pillars, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
And I think that's what brought me into this industry, is actually seeing how people present themselves. So I was in styling for 15 years, and that's when I really understood that brand, a huge part of what you wear, is a trust accelerator in what you wear, first impressions. However, it's not the only part, because what happens is you can look the part. So this is what was happening. I could take you out shopping and you would look the part. And that doesn't mean you need to wear a suit, by the way. It could just be this is part of your brand in what you do. And then you would go to a meeting and then you would go, hi, nice to meet you. And all of a sudden, the trust acceleration is going backwards.
The limp handshake.
Oh my goodness, wet fish. Ugh.
Yeah, I had a feeling that would get your back up, to be honest. But it's a really important thing. I mean, if you, for cultural reasons, don't shake hands, fine. But if you do, it's got to be firm.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I was speaking at a school, and I was so impressed that every single teenager who came up and asked me a question shook my hand. I was like, wow. So they came up and it was, hi, Miss Kelly, nice to meet you. And then they would ask me a question. And I was like, wow. And I said to the careers advisor at the end, I said, is this something that you teach? Because I said, it's so impressive. Because I said, I've just come from a meeting and the woman gave me a wet fish handshake. And I said, and all your teenagers have just delivered a really good, credible first impression.
And was it something they've been taught? Or is it just...
Yeah, and she said, no, it's just something that they do. And so I don't know if that's then kind of a message that the school does. I don't know, because she said, no, I've never seen handshaking classes, put it that way. So she said, it's not something that we tell them, but I was so impressed by it.
I'd be good in that class. I was not good
at school. Would that be an A star?
Oh, I'd rock that class. Yeah, they give me a degree for that, a first. But that's really interesting. I know you do quite a lot of work with teenagers now as well, and I guess personally, if you can sort out the idea of who you want to be as a teenager, knowing which direction you want to go, what image you want to project. You know, if you can work on a personal brand from a younger age, that's got to be a good thing.
Absolutely, because I think that there's so much competition now, and if your grades are the same as the 10,000 other applicants that are applying for a scholarship, how do you stand out? So that goes back to not a personal brand. How are you more memorable? And what do you do that's different that other people aren't doing?
Because everybody has the potential, can have a personal brand and a platform now.
Yes.
Because everybody has a phone and a social media account of whatever description. So it is really, I kind of feel for teenagers now, because it is very hard to stand out. And you may be great at stuff, but not great at communicating that you're great at whatever it is.
Yeah, and how can you stand out? So I think a lot of the things that like I talk about in branding, it's not rocket science, but what people don't do is they just don't do the small things consistently. And that goes back to building the trust, and the communication consistently, that you're always top of mind when someone goes, I need some help with this, you must speak to Kelly, or you need this, you must speak to so-and-so.
What are the small things? What do you mean when you say that people don't do consistently? If for somebody listening now thinking, well, give me an example of
So I would
something I should
say,
do.
okay, so I think there's digitally showing up
Yeah.
online, so
Yeah.
creating content that's of value and then sharing it consistently. So what people get is very excited about, their brand and their start, and then they'll go and they'll do a flurry of posts, and then you don't hear from them.
Okay.
So that's one example.
So consistency.
Yeah, in that. But I think other ways is also, what's your follow-up, with your team, or do you, how do you consistently bring people together? Do you write thank you notes? Do you, what's the small thing that you always remember someone's name, or you're known that you always send a birthday reminder to the whole team so everyone knows that you celebrate cake and you have birthday reminders. I don't know, something that makes you you. And people go, wow, that's the small things. I just did a TEDx talk on Saturday there, and the whole feeling was, legacy, and people get so caught up in what are we leaving behind? Like, what are you leaving behind for the next generation? But it's not that. It's what are you doing today? What impact are you having? How did I make you feel? How do I make the listeners feel to go and be and do something today? That's brand. That's happening now. And I think that's your legacy, and that's the small things that people need to do consistently.
There's a line in this that is coming across as being, I don't know if being kind is the right. Being kind is probably the right word, actually. Being decent
Human.
to people.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but human can be, not so great as well.
Yes,
I
yeah, no, you're
suppose.
right. You're right.
But being decent to people, doing, I think, what most people would term, the inverted commas thing of the right thing.
Absolutely. But I think we've lost a lot of that. We've lost the ability to be able to look in people's eyes and have conversations. We've lost the ability to be able to go and shake hands because we're too scared, because we've spent the whole time on our phones. And, I think there's the small pieces. We've forgotten how to dress, in terms of going to a meeting. And one of the things that I've been working with with teens is that they go and do an internship, but then they don't ask questions, or they don't dress. They look like they've just rolled out of bed, or they think it's appropriate to sit on a phone in a meeting. These are things that you think, but this is common sense, and it's not for everyone.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, we are kind of isolated now, aren't we? We're kind of, I think the world is kind of very divided. You're in one camp or the other. It's kind of expected that you take sides all the time.
Yeah.
And I often sort of think, well, I know what you mean, but I also know what you mean. And it's like, well, get off the fence. And I kind of think it's a comfortable place because I don't think you're right or you're right. But you're expected to be that way. And that's kind of isolationist in its way.
Yeah.
No?
But I think I liked how you said the fence piece there, and it's okay to have opinions. And that's, I think...
It's fine, but it's
yeah.
also okay to understand that balance is important. It used to be in journalism that you would check every source, and you'd have two sources, and then your story would be there. It's now not that. It's now whoever's first.
Oh.
And it doesn't matter if it's true. And that seems to have been lost, I think.
Yeah.
And actually, that's kind of a good point, because a lot of what you're putting across is based on trust, and trust is based on truth. The true, your true self, your authentic self. We're back to that phrase again. But I mean, simply put, that's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, and doing it consistently.
Right.
I think that's the big piece, because I think everyone can do the big wow once.
Yeah.
And then where are you a few days later? Where are you 3 months later? And I think that's the bit that then people remember.
Let's sort of move this on a little bit. We've covered some of the digital stuff, I suppose. Personal branding clearly isn't a new thing. It's there is a wave of personal branding brought on, I guess. So in a sense, maybe it is kind of generational, but it's just in that it's a newer way forward. But we're in a new area of human branding. You would suggest, I think, we're in the AI era, really kind of unexplored territory for most of us, because we don't know what's going to happen. Is it going to be evil, malevolent? Is it going to be great? Is it going to help us? Are we going to lose jobs? We're kind of learning at the moment. But the thing that AI can't do is it can't be authentically human, at least not yet.
Yeah.
You would argue, I think, that being human is a real advantage, a proper business advantage.
Yeah, and I would say that's your brand. I saw this somewhere written. Your brand, your personal brand, is your unfair advantage. Use it to your potential in that way. And how do you do that in the environment now? Is I think it comes down to one thing: your ability to be able to tell stories, and only you have your stories. So whilst AI can polish them up and make them sound a little better, or take a few typos out of it, ultimately it's coming from your experience. AI couldn't have written how I felt at the weekend doing my TEDx talk. But I can tell you the story of what it was like and the feeling and how to bring it together. And that's when people will engage. And I think that's when big brands are doing marketing really well, is they are finding other people to tell their stories as well, and doing collaborations, not in the traditional sense, but finding people who are just interesting.
I often look at adverts that use celebrities.
Yeah.
And I think I'm a bit contrary about this, if I'm honest with you. I don't know. The first thing that comes to mind is Brad Pitt and coffee machines. And I sort of think, I like Brad Pitt, good guy. George Clooney does an espresso as well, I think, for Japan. I like George Clooney, but I'm not going to buy those brands. And I wonder if that's me being contrary. Because I kind of think, and this goes back to them being authentic, perhaps, I sort of think they've got enough money.
Yeah.
They don't. I don't know. I'm not going to give them any. Is that? Am I being overly cynical there?
I don't know if I think about it in the same way, but maybe I don't. So I don't. I'm the other side. I'll be like, yeah, I buy into it, or it's the visibility, or how are they telling that story. So I think the person is slightly irrelevant. It's just, did it make me laugh? Or
Well, the George Clooney thing is very much, there was an ad with he was on a scooter and he just drove in a nice car, left on a scooter, and there was some sort of narrative, some sort of storytelling. So it's a little bit different. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, there's something that irks me, and I wonder if that's because I'm grumpy. I'm really not sure. But
are you their target audience?
I'm a coffee fanatic.
Yes,
so
okay,
yeah,
so
probably.
yeah, you are.
So I wonder about that. But I'd be beans, not pods. So that's a very different argument. But I think what I'm trying to get to is when it comes to personal branding, I find it quite hard to be a person that is seen as a brand. I kind of think, no, that's for other people. And I still think that now, even having talked to you for 45 minutes, it's kind of a hard thing to accept that you see me in this way, because I'm not sure that I worry about it enough. Does that make any sense?
And I think that goes back to the goals of, what's the purpose? And I think being proactive rather than reactive. So if you're not really driving anything in the sense of, I don't need to get promotion, I don't need to get clients through my door and for them to pay to work with me, then it can be harder to drive that versus going, hang on a minute, I need to make money this month because I own my own business. How am I going to do that? I need to advertise what it is that I'm doing. How do I advertise that? I need to put myself out there.
Good for you, because that's put me straight. No, no, I appreciate that. That's good. Let me ask you about something else that you do, because we've got about 7 or 8 minutes. You teach a framework, don't you? And it's actually kind of called a framework to help professionals and entrepreneurs lead with authenticity, confidence, and purpose. And we've kind of got the
We've
purpose.
touched on a few bits as
We've
well.
touched on a few bits there, but it's the confidence thing that I'm really interested in here, because I can't work out where you would start to teach or to encourage confidence, because you're teaching, I guess in most cases, grown adults, perhaps even quite experienced professionals, to be more confident. And you would think you've got there through elements of confidence, because I always think confidence is kind of not learned, it's kind of earned through the hard knocks, through the experience, through growing in life and that kind of thing, and being exposed to situations. How do you, and I'm not being cynical about this, but where do you start when you point out how you could be more confident? What do you do?
It's a really interesting question. So I didn't really appreciate how much I was helping people with their confidence.
Right.
And it wasn't until I went to ChatGPT and I put in this prompt and I said, of all the information I've told you about myself, tell me one thing you don't think I know about me. And I was like, ooh, okay. Because you're always typing stuff in, whether it's emails to help me with this document, blah, blah, blah. And it actually came back with, you give people an invisible, what was it? Something along the lines of a permission slip. It's confidence that actually you think you're doing personal branding, but what you're instilling is this confidence. And it's real. And the fact that you've brought that up today is, well, how do I do that? So I've thought about that. Confidence comes through action. So it comes through doing. So what I do is I hold people accountable and go, you said that you would commit to this. And then when they see the feedback from a post they put out on LinkedIn or from a strategy that we're doing for visibility within the organization, and they've got, 5 meetings and that's resulted into X, Y, and Z. And they're like, wow. And that's the confidence piece. And then every time when we check in, it's like, so what are the things that you've done? Well, that happened, and that happened. Wow. Oh, and I got asked to speak in this meeting. Wow, because you did this. All those steps instill confidence. So it's coming through having done repeatedly.
See, that's so interesting, because I take myself as the example here. I haven't really got anything else to fall back on. But when I was a kid, I was quite a quiet kid, I think. I don't think I was necessarily a shy kid. I mean, all kids are to an extent, and then they come out of themselves. But I was the kid that would sit and listen, and then I'd be like, well, why is that? Put your hand up and ask why, because I didn't get it. But I always did that. But I think a lot of people mistake quietness, thoughtfulness, for shyness.
Correct.
Don't they?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, I in an organisation years and years ago, we'd be like, you need to speak out more in meetings. Most of the meetings went on far too long. I was bored. I wanted to get out of them because I had work to do, and I just wasn't interested. Oh, you need to speak more. But the reason I needed to speak up more was the perception that I needed to grow in the organisation. And I was like, no, I need to get the work done. I'm not interested in all of this. So I think, how do you overcome that? If you're a naturally kind of, not reserved person necessarily, but you are thoughtful and you're taking things in, you're good at your job, but how do you get over that perception that, quiet bloke sits in the corner, that?
And I think that there's different ways that you'd have to look at doing that. Is that something that you could look at, putting yourself forward for initiatives within the organisation that might not mean you have to go and public speak, but it could be, you know what, I'm going to take responsibility for the Christmas party or the this, whatever it is, or the charity experience that we're going to do. I'm going to take that. So it doesn't mean that you have to go and get public speaking lessons, but there's visibility through doing something that's not just what you sitting in the corner.
Final question, 2 minutes left. Personal branding is important, you would argue, and I'm kind of with you on that. I think
If I converted you.
Do you know, I'm not as cynical as I was. I am honest. Yeah. No, I do understand it. Whether I'll put all of these steps into place is a different thing. But What would you say to somebody who's just switched on now and is just joined and they're like, oh, personal branding, I don't know about that. How would you conclude the conversation, is what I'm asking.
I think it would probably go back to a few key points that we've mentioned in the last sort of 50 minutes is, do you want to do this? So what's your purpose for doing this, first of all? Then...
And do you need to do this
Exactly,
as well, I suppose?
exactly.
Yeah.
Is this going to be purposeful for my next steps? And I think getting really clear on why. Even just a very quick example was, I remember Gary Vaynerchuk having a very similar conversation with sort of 4 or 5 billionaires, and they're like, well, we don't need to work on our personal brand, or we don't need to do this. And he's like, but are you passionate about something out with what you do? Yeah, I'm working on this charity and I'm doing this and I'm doing this and for a not-for-profit. But yes, then you have a brand. You want people to give to that charity, or you want to be seen and do that. That's your brand that people are buying into. So I think there is a purpose and why are you doing that? So I think that's a big piece.
That's interesting, because I look at the big billionaires, the Elon Musks, and I don't know, the Amazon guy, Jeff Bezos, and I wonder if it's something that they've worked on. Jeff Bezos, I would argue, probably has.
Yeah,
That
and
would-
he,
that
and
would
he
be a
talks a
theory.
lot about your personal brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. He's got a famous quote about that. So I think he's very aware
Yeah.
in the visibility space. And then I added into, and it's how you make people feel, whether you're in the room or not.
Would you like to work on Elon Musk's personal brand?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a hard one.
But then that's a direct effect of when you go and do something in your personal brand and it has a negative impact, and stock prices and what have you. Well, that's a whole nother episode.
That is. You've created the argument. Look, you're going to have to come back and talk to us again. I hope you will.
Love to.
Brilliant. Callie Lundberg is the personal branding person. How's that?
Good.
That's pretty
I'm
close.
good with that.
Appreciate you joining us. Thanks very much. Mira Business FM.